The United Kingdom is in the throes of another political crisis as Theresa May is set to leave the seat of Prime Minister wide open in a couple of days. Now, her decision to leave comes after repeated failures in the House of Commons to strike some kind of suitable Brexit deal. And in the midst of all this, guess who's coming to dinner? President Donald Trump arrives in the UK to throes of non-adoring crowds. Mr. Trump spent his second day in the UK. First, he met with UK business leaders. Then he held this joint news conference with Theresa May, where he seemed tame. Still, though, he managed to rip into Labour opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn, and he also again ripped into the mayor of London. Question: what does all this really mean? He is the former First Minister of Scotland. He is also the host of the Alex Salmond Show here on RT. We welcome Alex Salmond. I have to ask you, first and foremost, what do you make of this Trump visit?
Well, it's been a whirlwind. I think the president started off true to form. I mean, he was causing controversy and consternation even before he touched down in Air Force One. He was tweeting that he felt the mayor of London was a loser and such things, which is not normally the diplomatic protocol when you're about to land for a state visit. But I have to say, since he touched down and went to Buckingham Palace and has seen and had an audience and meeting and lunch with the 93-year-old Queen Elizabeth II, the monarch, he seems to have had a calming effect on his behaviour. And I've never seen the Donald on better behaviour than he's been in the state visit. So he was his usual self as he swept in an Air Force One, and he's been trying to modulate his behaviour after he met the Queen.
He seemed specifically modulated when he was meeting with Theresa May, which brings me to my next question. I think there's something like 12 contenders right now for her post. Is Boris Johnson a shoo-in? What would you call where he is right now?
Well, there were 13, but one has dropped out. So it was a baker's dozen. Now it's just a dozen. Although there are rumours there might be another 2 in the next couple of days before nominations close come Monday. Now, given the dreadful, dreadful time that Theresa May has had in office, you cannot believe there are 12 people on this planet who want the job as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, but apparently there are within the Conservative Party. So who's leading? Well, definitely Boris Johnson would be the favourite. If this was the Kentucky Derby, then he'd be, pretty well just over even money. He would be a strong favourite. But as we know from backing favourites in the Kentucky Derby, it doesn't always turn out that way.
But the Tories are going to sit down and they're going to figure out who they want as their Prime Minister, right? If for some reason they're not able to come up with a decision, or if everything gets all screwed up somehow, as not that could possibly happen in the UK these days, will that mean, help us understand, will that mean they'll have to have a general election?
Well, the Conservative Party is deeply divided at the present moment. It's totally riven. I mean, it's colleague against colleague, comrade, if it wasn't the Conservative Party, against comrade. Everybody is fighting like cats and dogs. But there is one thing that unifies the whole of the Conservative Party, and that is they don't want a general election. And the reason for not wanting a general election is they got an absolute drubbing in the Euro elections which took place last week. So when you get reduced to a rump with single figures in percentage terms in the Euro elections, then the one thing that unites the entire parliamentary Conservative Party is they don't want a general election. So they'll strive might and main to avoid having a general election. It's the one thing which unites the Conservative Party.
So if they go to a general election, that's where we could see a Jeremy Corbyn or Nigel Farage suddenly sneak in. Otherwise, they're just going to be making headlines in the meantime, correct? And noise.
Well, that's correct. They'll do their best to avoid it, but sometimes you get a general election whether you want to have one or not. And if there were to be a general election, then the Tories would be in mortal threat from Nigel Farage's new Brexit party. Nigel Farage, the very, very close friend of President Trump. And there's also Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, a very, very close enemy President Trump. So if President Trump has anything to do with it, it would be Nigel Farage. But I suspect that Nigel Farage has a bit of a task, because to come from no seats in the House of Commons to a majority is a pretty Herculean task, the sort of thing that only somebody with the incomparable political ability of the President of the United States could possibly manage.
But we've been seeing video today of thousands of Brits gathering, having an anti-Trump protest of sorts, if not some kind of party is what it looked like at times. Are they representative of the country, or is that just an outlier group?
The President of the United States says it was fake news. He actually personally saw the demonstration, and it was just a tiny handful of people. So it was completely fake news that there were tens of thousands of people demonstrating against him. The demonstration was pretty good-natured. It was a lot of fun. You know, there was the famous Trump baby blimp balloon, which was flying over the House of Commons in Parliament Square, where Donald Trump wasn't allowed to address the parliamentarians because the Speaker of the House of Commons wouldn't have them. And there was a Trump robot which broke wind apparently every so often. So there was a lot of humour in the demonstration. And my own view, I've been knowing the Donald to my cost pretty well, if you actually want to get under his skin, which is not the most difficult thing in the world, incidentally, but if you do want to get under his skin, then humour is certainly the way to burst his bubble.
Well explained. We thank you, Alex Salmond, former First Minister of Scotland and the host of the Alex Salmond Show. I'm Rick Sanchez. You found us on YouTube, and that's awesome. But you know what? I'm also live every night at 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern on DirecTV and Dish and cable and satellite, the RT app, and Pluto TV. I'll see you there.